Hello, and welcome to The Objective. If this is your first time, welcome. We hope you like our show. If you're an old hat, welcome back. We're so excited to have a set of loyal followers already, even though this is our third episode. We're very excited for today's show because today we're going to get to the nitty gritty. We're going to get to what this show is actually about, which is understanding the structures of large, complex arguments so that we can better argue those arguments and have conversations about them. So for today, we're pulling apart the impeachment of the United States president, probably one of the most complex and controversial arguments that is happening at this time. So how are we going to do that? Well, if you watched our earlier episode on Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch's hearing, or her testimony during the impeachment hearings, you'll see near the end that we showed this technique called the flow. And what a flow is basically where we take one argument and list out all the components on the left in a column. And then we take the counter rebuttals, the counter arguments to that first argument, and we list them as well. And what it allows us to do is to actually see what people are saying, and most importantly, to see what people are not saying. It allows us to compare an argument to its counter argument immediately and to see, does the argument hold water? Does the counter argument hold water? Are they not making a counter argument for this specific area? And you'll see this probably not in today's episode, but as we continue to build out the impeachment debate and impeachment arguments, you will start to see that on both sides, there are many times where there is a claim made and no one argues it. And it's taken as, okay, you agree to that claim. And so that's what the flow allows us to do, is to actually start to see those pieces so that we're not lost in this weird world of, well, you're throwing facts over at me. Well, let me throw some more facts over at you. And no, let's just have an actual debate and see where the facts lead us. Okay? So let's jump into what you're actually seeing right now. What you're seeing is the build out of our argument. And this is after watching and reading almost all of the 30 hours of testimony over the last 2 weeks. So we've been watching this testimony, taking notes. On some of our earlier videos, you can see us actually taking notes, and we'll probably pepper footage of that in just to show, hey, we actually did this. And the result, the outcome of all of that work are these less than 24 note cards that you're looking at right now. And what these note cards represent are the main tenets of the argument and counter arguments that are being made when it comes to impeachment. Now, this is not the full debate, right? What this is sort of the first layer, the big picture. That's what this episode is what are these folks trying to convince us of? That's all we're trying to answer here. So how about I shut up and let's just go into the argument that we're building. So as you can see, we have two columns, and this is that flow structure. So what have we got going here? We have a set of arguments that fulfill three main purposes. And these three purposes are going to exist in any argument, anytime you're trying to convince any person to do something. You have to do three things. First, you have to prove there's a problem. We call those harms. Second, you have to prove that you have a plan that can address those harms. That's called a plan. Third, you have to prove that your plan will actually work, that it won't fail, that you have the resources to make it happen. That's called solvency, right? There are lots of different words for these things in lots of different areas and lots of different disciplines, but for this case, we're going to call them harms, plan, and solvency. And so the note cards we have are arranged roughly in that order. So first off, thinking of the Democrats, since they're the ones trying to make their case, they're the cards in blue here on the left. There are four arguments that they're trying to make as far as harms go, and they are grouped into two groups. The first group is bribery. They're saying the President of the United States committed bribery. The second is obstruction of justice. It seems that they're also trying to unroll an obstruction of justice charge. Now, when you break down into those two arguments, you have two main sets of arguments in each group. So in bribery, the first argument you have is that President Donald Trump demanded political investigations of the Ukrainians. The second argument right next to it is that he withheld funding and a White House meeting from the Ukrainians until they gave him until they gave him these investigations. These are the two arguments for bribery. Lots of sub-arguments there, but this is the main thing. Second, obstruction. There are two main arguments here as well. The first, that President Donald Trump intimidated witnesses and kept others from testifying, as well as keeping subpoenaed documents from being shown to Congress. Second argument, that President Trump had the call hidden in the secret server. Right, that's the second thing. If this July 25th call, it was hidden in a secret server so people couldn't see it, therefore obstructing justice. That's the argument. So now we have to get into the second component, the second major structure of debate, which is the plan. Well, what is the plan? How are we going to fix all this corruption and bribery and obstruction of justice? We are going to impeach and remove the person responsible. Right? Does that make sense how this argument is being built out? Now, there's lots of counter arguments which we'll look into, but for right now, the main component, the reason the Democrats are saying we have to impeach the president right now is because we have to stop corruption now. We can't wait for an election. We have to stop corruption now. And again, lots of sub-arguments about how it might be hurting democracy, hurting other countries, hurting our own countries. We'll get into that. But the main argument, we must stop corruption's bad influences now. Finally, solvency. Right? So we've got these harms, we've got the plan, now I got to prove the plan will actually work. In this case, is impeachment really appropriate for these types of issues? So here, there are two arguments. The first is that bribery is explicitly mentioned in the Constitution. There's a smaller argument here that obstruction of justice is referred to as a high crime or misdemeanor. That's going to be a tougher argument to handle just because those two phrases are not defined, but bribery is defined. The second argument here of why this plan will work is that a fair trial will give a just verdict. That's it. This argument's not really being made. No one's really debating this per se, of whether or not a fair trial will give a just verdict. What people are debating is what constitutes a fair trial, and that we will also still dig into in another episode. But for right now, again, we're just doing the big arguments. On the Republican side, we've got two main types of rebuttals that are being used. And these phrases are a straight rebuttal and a turn. If those don't make sense to you, feel free to check out our first video, which talks about all four main types of rebuttals that people use in arguments. But for now, we're just going to plow forward. So the first counter argument to Trump demanded the investigations is a straight rebuttal, saying, no, Trump just asked for the investigations into corruption, right? He asked. It was a favor. The second rebuttal that we're seeing under the bribery charge, we're using Trump's favorite argument, which is a turn. This is the argument we start to see coming out of the administration as well as his supporters. And that is, yes, Trump withheld the meeting and the money, but he did it to stop corruption. This is kind of reading in between the lines. No one has really argued that this meeting and the money weren't withheld, right? Because they were. It seems that everybody's saying, we're actually doing it for a good reason. So that's Trump's famous turn argument. Again, watch the first episode if that doesn't make sense to you. But yep, so that's the first main set of arguments, is a straight rebuttal and a turn. Now into the obstruction of justice charge, right? So first we have not allowing people to testify, not giving documents, intimidating witnesses. These we're seeing a straight rebuttal set of arguments come across as well. The first is he's not allowing people to testify because executive privilege. That's the first one. Second, the whole intimidating, and that came up during Marie Yovanovitch's hearing where he tweeted out and Adam Schiff called it out during the hearing and said, I think he's intimidating witnesses. The response there is it's freedom of speech. The president can say whatever it is that he wants to say or tweet out whatever it is that he wants to tweet out. Okay, and then on the second charge of Trump had the transcript of the call hidden so that nobody could look at it, there seemed to be several straight rebuttals here as well, saying no, he did not have it hidden. One, the lawyers decided this. This is based upon Alexander Vindman's testimony. And two, it was more of a clerical issue of not knowing where to put it than of the president deciding he wanted to keep as many eyes off of it as possible. That's the argument here. Now, we've got three main arguments left, and if you remember, those are from the plan and the solvent. First, starting with our trickier argument, the Trump favorite, the turn, we have removing Trump increases corruption and ruins democracy. So this is in response to the charge that we must stop corruption now. Their argument is, no, we are cleaning the swamp. You are the ones that are corrupt, right? You'll see terms like deep state. You'll see these other terms. This is the big argument. This is the one that makes it on Fox News, that makes it on to the pressers that folks mention quite frequently. They're using this turn argument pretty well, I would say, by saying, no, you're not ending corruption by this impeachment trial. You are actually being even more corrupt. Really good turn argument here. The remaining two arguments, we have a straight rebuttal, right? When they say bribery is explicitly mentioned in the Constitution, it seems right now that the response is, he didn't commit bribery, so it doesn't apply to us. Fair enough. And then the final argument here, that a fair trial will give a just verdict. Again, I was saying earlier that no one's really arguing it, and that's true. So that's why we give it an agree from the Republicans. They're not really arguing that either. Again, there's lots of sub-arguments about whether or not this trial and hearing is fair and just. But nobody's arguing that a fair trial will give a just reason. Not yet. Make sense? All right. So that's the argument, right? Now you may be looking at this thinking, okay, great, you've put a bunch of note cards up, but I want to point something out. This is really cool. You'll see there's no missed arguments here, right? The flow's not really doing what it should be doing yet because we haven't dug down deep enough, but we can already start to see a really cool trend. And that is, look at the defenders of Trump's counter arguments and look at their two turns. Do you see how they both have to do with corruption? Right? If you've listened to or watched the earlier episodes, you'll know I'm a huge fan of turns. And moreover, I think Donald Trump uses the turn argument better than any politician of my lifetime. I think he uses them very well. And I think in this impeachment trial, the trial theoretically for his career, for his legacy, I think he's going to use as many turns as he can. So my prediction for where this impeachment debate is going to go is we haven't even seen the beginning of it yet. Look at these two turn arguments. They both have to do with corruption, and they both are basically saying that Donald Trump right now is behaving in a way that keeps corruption out. He is the anti-corrupter. And what is happening now, this impeachment trial, these hearings, these reportings, these are the corruptors. They are the corrupting influence. That's where I see this argument going, just looking at the flow. And that's one of the cool things about flowing out arguments. I see everything else is just a straight rebuttal. No, he didn't do this. No, he didn't do it. No, he wasn't there. But these two things, they are making their meat and potatoes argument. President Trump is not the corruption. So that's my predictor. I'm curious what other trends you guys see, either in this flow or as we build out more flows, or if you're doing flows yourself. Practice, whatever, let us know. This is really exciting to me. This is why we're doing this. So on that, I'll say everybody's got a great holiday coming up to practice some of this, right? If you got that grandpa you want to piss off, that niece or nephew that you just hate, try flowing it out with them. Try breaking down the impeachment article. No, seriously, I wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving, a very happy week if you don't celebrate. Just do something cool. Do something that you like. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Have a great day.